Hello and welcome to the Gridiron Show, our draft review special. Will G and Will B back again. Will Gavin and the former New York Giant and Green Bay Packer Will Blackmon alongside me. And for the second year in a row, day one of the NFL draft was absolutely dominated by a quarterback who's already headed to the Hall of Fame. Yes, we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. We're going to talk about the moves that were made on day one. We're going to talk about the draft as a whole, how the players that Will worked with got on, and just give our reaction. Will, a few days removed from the draft now, how are you feeling about, the whole process, how it worked in Cleveland? Have you suddenly become a huge Kings of Leon fan? How are you feeling about that?
You know what? I will say you are, first of all, good to see you again. You are rather dapper today, I must say. But I did bring you a surprise. If you didn't recognize the logo, I am wearing my Wembley Stallions
absolutely
sweatshirt
beautiful.
Here.
That is stunning. Absolutely stunning.
So and the hat. So when I spent my my few months in London in 2019, I was reaching out to local teams like, hey, I want to come check out or practice. I did have gear with me. So I did go check out their practice, and they were in the middle of a 7-on-7 flag football game. And they said, hey, you want to get in? And I'm like, you know what? I did bring my cleats. I might as well. So I jumped right in. I started. I went out for one pass, and it was not a good throw. So I was like, you know what? I'll be quarterback. And ended up bringing my team back. I think they were down 28 points. We won, I think, like 45-35, something crazy like that. So there's my Wembley Stallion story.
Superb. So we did it. We went out when we were doing a tour, and we were out in Charlotte for a game, Monday Night Football, Panthers, Dolphins, and our hotel, we got in a little bit early, and our hotel was a stone's throw from the stadium. So we all had our gear on us, just like our workout gear, gym gear or whatever. And somebody had a ball that they bought while we were at another city. And so we went out to throw a few around and play a little 3-on-3. A few more guys joined, a bit of 5-on-5. And it was exactly the same thing. It was a bunch of British guys who didn't really know what they were doing, just having a bit of fun. One American guy who was at the park, saw us playing, came over, took over at quarterback, and essentially took over the whole game. So I completely understand how those poor people must have felt when you turned up, which let me run the game. I'll be fine.
I'll be quarterback. And listen, you guys just catch the ball and score, and just listen to me, and we got this. Listen to the pro. But yeah, no, it was an exciting weekend. I think it was exhilarating. I think the first round was fun because it was just full of you just didn't know. And I think so many people have platforms now where there was so much information about mock drafts, who can go where, rumors being spread all over the place. But let's get right to the draft. Okay. I want to talk about, I actually projected when I was on Sky Sports, they said, "Whoa, give us your top 5 picks, your first 5 in order." So I said Trevor Lawrence for sure. I actually had Justin Fields going to the Jets. We can get back and talk about this one. I had Trey Lance the whole time going to San Francisco. I even have a tweet where somebody, when I saw that San Fran moved up to number 3, I said, "Oh." And then someone tweeted me, "Who do you think is for?" And I said, Trey Lance. That's who it's for. So I'm going to keep going on and on about that. Number 4, I did have Kyle Pitts going to Atlanta, simply because why would you move on from Matt Ryan? I'm sure the general manager is like, we have a quarterback. We're not rebuilding. We just need a reset. And then everyone went crazy at the Bengals pick. I actually had Jamar Chase going to the Bengals at 5. And so everyone's like, you need to protect the quarterback. You need to get Penei Sewell because Joe Burrow is recovering from an ACL injury. So you got to protect him. I'm like, well, if you actually watch how he got injured, the guy who fell into him was getting pancaked. Mm-hmm. So it was due to a good block why he got injured. So, but I'm happy for you and your Niners. Hold on. I'm gonna give you the floor. Go ahead. Talk to me about this, because you said there was a video that I did not see yet.
There is a video of me before we were live on the radio show on TalkSport 2, and before the pick, they were building up to it and they were giving me a bit of stick, and they were, I'd said, look, I've accepted at this point that there's every chance that it could be Mac Jones. Like, I'd actually just been so convinced by all of the bluster over the last few months, and it was fascinating hearing Kyle Shanahan essentially say that whilst he was in the conversation, it was never really Mac Jones, but they never shut that down either, because why would you shut it down? Why, like, even though you're not going to necessarily, there's no point in a smoke screen at 3. You know who's going at 2 probably, even if, it wasn't going to be Zach Wilson. Robert Saleh's probably told them who he's taking at 2. Right. They knew who was going to be available. They knew who they were going to take. And Kyle Shanahan talking about him afterwards, he was on with Peter King this week, talking about, how he fell in love with the player on tape and how his whole approach to these guys is see how they're on tape, see if I fall in love with them, then start off from scratch with the man and see if what I find out from the person matches what I've seen on tape. And he's like, I fell in love with the tape and I started from scratch again. I met him, got to know him, saw how intelligent he was, saw how thought out he was, saw how much he loved football. And he fell in love with the man just as much as he fell in love with the tape. And he's known for a while that the guy he wanted was Trey Lance. And that, to me, I have to trust Kyle Shanahan at this point. We've clearly gone all in on him and John Lynch. So look, whenever you trade up, whenever you give that much away, it's going to be a make or break pick. And he's clearly an incredibly high ceiling player. The idea that system, which can make or break a quarterback, not just a single year, but a career for them, could have someone with that kind of upside, with that kind of talent, both with the arm, the running talent, everything around it. And the fact that from what I like, everything that came out, and obviously this could all be bluster as well, but John Lynch coming out and saying the first thing that happened after we picked Trey Lance was Jimmy Garoppolo text me asking for his number. The first person to reach out to Trey Lance was Jimmy Garoppolo. There was none of this Rodgers and Favre, Rodgers and Love, none of this, or to use a San Francisco analogy, there was none of the kind of Steve Young, Joe Montana stuff. Apparently Jimmy Garoppolo has accepted that he knows what his situation is there and he's ready to work with him. I'm all in. I'm ready for it. If it fails, it fails.
You sure he didn't text any? You sure he didn't text any threats? If you think you're gonna come here and take my job, you better think otherwise, buddy.
There's a little bit of me that would have enjoyed that as well. I'm not gonna lie. There's a little bit of me that would have enjoyed that as well. From the outside, what do you make of that big decision?
I think that is the case, because if you have a quarterback as talented as we think he is in that Kyle Shanahan offense, it should be lights out, and I look at a prime example, he is not the same player, but what Aaron was able to do in Green Bay in LaFleur's offense, which is from Shanahan, and now I'm excited to see what Matt Stafford does in LA with the Rams in that Shanahan offense. The thing about this offense, like, there's a system, there's ways to beat you, but if your quarterback isn't, I would say, super talented, elite status, there is a lot of hand holding in this offense where it's kind of like, hey, this is where the ball should go. This is what you should do, because perhaps you're limited in ways. And that's what I saw with Goff. I saw Goff, he's able to make a lot of plays and do a lot of things, but I felt like he was very limited, where if McVay told him to throw it to this receiver and he wasn't open, it's like, okay, now you got to improvise and you got to figure it out. I look at Garoppolo and, where he's throwing a lot of 4-yard, 5-yard, 6-yard passes, like here and there, dink and dunk and up and down the field, not really proposing a huge threat. Like, man, we got to watch out for this guy. When Shanahan had Matt Ryan won the MVP. Mm-hmm. I believe that was the case, and went to the Super Bowl and ended up losing. But he had a quarterback who had that elite level type of arm. So now you have a quarterback who apparently has the elite level arm, and we know he can run. He's athletic and he's smart and intelligent, and he takes care of the football. That was the biggest thing too, is in the limited amount of games he played, I think he threw 1 interception in his college career. And I believe he had 48 touchdowns. I wanted to double check. So I think this is a great pick. And here's the thing. This pick reminds me of the Trey Lance pick, reminds me of the Josh Allen pick. Simply because Right. You have the smaller school, not great competition, but huge upside and ability. But it's all about the situation you go into. And I think with Josh Allen, he went into the perfect situation. It's a really good defense. It's a really good team, really good coaches, really good front office, and a really good coordinator to really put him in position where he can flourish. Now Josh Allen just owns it. He came into his own, and he's going to be an MVP player soon. Trey Lance could not have gone to a better situation where he's getting San Fran's getting their defensive players back who they were all injured, and this, no COVID restrictions. You bring back Trent Williams, you have a nice offensive line, you're getting more weapons out there, and you have a great play caller in Kyle Shanahan. So I think he is in an incredible situation where it's kind of like the sky's the limit for him. So I love this pick, where, it's different where you see Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville. We don't know what they're going to be. We don't know, but that's why he went number one overall. But is it the greatest situation? No, but he's number one overall. Don't know what that's going to be. Same thing with Zach Wilson. We don't know.
It's interesting. Zach Wilson, you've obviously you've been talking about the Shanahan system. Mike LaFleur goes with Robert Saleh to the Jets. So again, right. Assuming that they can implement that system with relative haste, they got their left tackle last year. They have some weapons there. They went and got more of them in this draft. Like, there are reasons to be excited about what they have on at least the offensive side of the ball in New York. The defense still probably needs a lot of work, but I thought Saleh did a brilliant job with the injuries last year to keep them at a high level. So does that translate? What do you make of the Jags? Trevor Lawrence is as slam dunk as it's come at number one in theory. Again, you have to see how it translates. How does a guy who's only ever lost 2 games in his entire career handle the fact that he'll probably lose 2 games in September? Similarly with with the coach there and with everything else going on there, it's a rebuild and they have to deal with that. What do you make of them then going with what is pretty much a luxury pick, bringing in a guy who I love, but taking a running back in the first round to match up with their quarterback when there are a lot of other areas of need on that team? Yeah,
I think you get a guy who can be explosive like a Alvin Kamara, like a Christian McCaffrey. You want somebody like that. You need a playmaker that's going to free up space for everybody else. Yes, they have a running back now, Robinson, who, he did very, very well last year, but who's to say that was due to it depends on the situation. But I just like the fact that they went and got Travis Etienne, because he was, how people draft, you have what you need, and you always hear it, what you need and the best player available. And apparently they wanted Toomey, who went to the Giants. Urban Meyer came out and said that, like, that's who he wanted. But I think this Travis Etienne pick is a situation where he's going to get a lot of all-purpose yards, and it was just somebody that they needed to have, another playmaker on that side of the football. So there are other needs, but it's like, hey, let's get our playmakers now, and then maybe later on in the draft we can find other value where guys can come through and do well for us.
Look, there's lots more to talk about from the draft, but before we get to the rest of the draft, those first defensive players off the board, Carolina and Denver in particular, I want to mention Chicago trading up, Mac Jones falling, everything else there. You are a man who knows what it was to play football in the great state of Wisconsin, in the smallest town that can consider itself a major sports town, maybe in the world, certainly in the States. What do you make of everything that's happened over the last few days with the reports that first came out, with the idea that it was maybe a done deal going to Denver, that Rodgers wants out apparently? Is this all smokescreens? Is this all him trying to get his way, or do you actually think there's some legitimacy here?
I have no idea what's going on right now in Green Bay. I don't know. Like, for him to say that he's disgruntled, there's a lot of it's just a lot of rumors. He's disgruntled. He wants out. He first, before all this, years ago, he wanted Mike McCarthy fired because they didn't get along. Now he wants the general manager fired. There's new news out there that he called the Packers general manager, Brian Gutekunst, he called him the Jerry Krause of the NFL. And for those who know who Jerry Krause is, he was the general manager for the Chicago Bulls during the Jordan era and kind of blew that team up at the end and got rid of everybody. And so he's comparing him, saying like, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to blow it up, start over, and put his own fingerprint on the team. That was
like,
that was reported.
Happy.
No, listen though. This is reported from Bob McGinn. He said this was it was a group text that was leaked. This is from Bob McGinn. And I've known Bob McGinn from my playing days. And Bob is the one where everything's off the record, right? He's Mr. Off the record. Like nobody would know. And he's probably mic'd and bugged up. And me and Bob, we got along and we're still friends, but he used to just come up with the craziest stories that they're just head scratchers. And you just like, where did he get this information from? Like, is he just throwing out grenades and just hoping somebody lands on him? Like, I don't know what is going on. So for this is just wild. It's out of control.
We are talking about a team who you can accuse him of wanting to blow it up or whatever else, but they've got an all-pro left tackle, an all-pro wide receiver, arguably a top 10 running back, and then maybe even a top 20 running back sitting behind him. The coach has gone 26-6 over 2 seasons. They were the top scoring offense last year. Like, what this idea that Aaron Rodgers hasn't been supported seems mad to me. Again, Will, I have no idea what's true and what isn't. It's just like anything. People will say one thing and then it spreads like wildfire. You know, so say it's what happened recently with the whole Russell Wilson thing. Apparently he wanted out, and then everyone comes out and says like that was never true. That was never the case. You know, he's like, well, if I did want to trade, you know, I would go to these teams. And that even made it seem more realistic. Like, oh, Russell is fed up. Russell wants out. Russell's not being protected. Russell, da-da-da-da-da. Who knows? Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think it's going to be the biggest story to keep following. And whether that's coming from Rodgers, coming from inside the building, who knows? But
I will say, I will give Aaron Rodgers this amount of credit, though. He definitely overshadowed the Tebow news of him wanting to come back and play for Jacksonville.
and can't we all thank him for that at least? Can't we all applaud him and say, well done for not making us talk about Tim Tebow, because we would have ended up having that conversation probably, even though you've now brought it up.
I did bring it up.
Look, I'm with you on the Jamar Chase pick, sensational player, and they went and got Jackson Carman at the top of the second round. They found more offensive line help deeper. They do still have top picks from last year as well. So, you know, they've still got guys there who need to get healthy, and there's still potential in that team. They do need to undoubtedly protect Joe Burrow, but if he's got guys he can get the ball out to quickly, that actually helps as much as a good offensive line.
Right.
Like,
well, somebody he threw 20 touchdowns to. Someone he is well acquainted with. He doesn't have to, can they get on the same page? Like, he is. This guy, Jamar Chase, he's like a little bit of OBJ, and he's just a little bit of Jarvis Landry. Like, just a couple of traits from both.
An exciting mix to me. It sounds like something well worth investing into me. Jalen Waddle ends up at the Dolphins. The Lions dance around the draft room, finding out that they get Penei Sewell. And then before we get into the fun with the NFC East and with the Bears as well, around 10 to 11, just tell me what you made of JC Horn going to Carolina, Patrick Surtain going to the Broncos. You know, we see the first two defensive backs off the board, and both teams who we thought might go quarterback, and both teams who went, no, I'm going to take our top defensive player on our board.
Okay. JC Horn pick. You are in the NFC South, where Atlanta, the Saints, and the Bucks have a slew of weapons that can put points on the board. If there is a high value defender that can help cover at least one of those playmakers, you go get that guy. And so, you want it, you need to load up and try to stop teams from scoring. I look at the same in the AFC West. You're going against the Chiefs. You're going against the Chargers in Oakland. You need to get another guy who you can at least eliminate or defend one of those playmakers. So I see the thought process, and that is like, look, we got to get more guys on defense that can defend these guys. Let's do that. So they felt they were probably weaker in some areas in terms of that. And again, this could be a situation where it was like, hey, we really value these guys super, super high. And if they're there for us, we're going to go get it. So I see, because here's the thing. And Coach Robert Saleh said it the best. He said recently that Zach Wilson, I want Zach Wilson to know that he is not going to do it alone. He does not have to do it alone. He does not have to come here, put on his Superman cape, and save the Jets. We will help him. We will build a team around him, and we will help him. And that's the case here, is like, let's get more talent on the team in itself. Like, it makes no sense to go up there and get a quarterback when we're still trying to figure out the other areas in our team. If we necessarily don't really, maybe we do need a quarterback, but there wasn't a quarterback there that they wanted. Okay. If it wasn't Trevor, if it wasn't Trevor or Zach, it was probably like, then we're out the quarterback play. Okay. So that's how I see it right there. So I like those two picks going defense.
And I think what I like about it as well is that, a lot of people had Surtain going above Horn, but actually what you said about the division they're in and the fact that Horn is seen as the more aggressive player, the more the ball hawk, the guy who's going to bump guys off the line, a bit more in that kind of Richard Sherman mold, whereas Surtain is much more of the refined, highly technical, has all of those kind of coverage abilities, looks slick as anything. They actually suit the teams and the locations they've landed in much better because of it. I kind of feel like we probably should have seen that coming rather than going the other way around, as so many of us did in our mocks. But
that's what happens, though. That's what happens when they look at, in particular, things like that. They got to get a quarterback because Elway went through 50 quarterbacks since Peyton retired. So that's easy to look at. But right, you got to find a way to defend those other guys. Otherwise, it's going to be a long day.
Let's talk about then that run 10-12, when first of all at 10, the Eagles move above the Giants, trading with the Cowboys of all teams, screwing over one NFC East team by helping another in terms of Jerry Jones. They get Devonta Smith, who many people liked more than Waddle, Heisman Trophy winner, of course, this year, immediately going to go in and probably be the number one receiver at the Eagles and take some of that pressure off the other guys there as well. And with the Giants knowing the wide receiver was off the board, Chicago go, fine, right. The Giants are going to want out of that pick. Let's give them another first. Let's go and get Justin Fields. Let's give this GM and this coach one last chance to prove themselves now that they've got a quarterback who maybe has some talent. I mean, it's fair to say the ceiling, though, with Fields is higher than it was with Trubisky.
Yeah, because that's the Trubisky pick caught everybody off guard. That was the guy they were married to. That's what they wanted. And they went up and got Trubisky. So I figured it was this time around. They're like, look, not this time. We are not. They cannot go wrong with getting Justin Fields. If it doesn't work out, then it's like, hey, at least they went and found out. If they didn't make this move and they went and tried to get other players to build around Andy Dalton, then they would look super crazy. But they had to do it. If Ryan Pace and Nagy wanted to save their jobs, this might have been the case. Now they're trying to put their jobs in jeopardy because they're already saying Andy Dalton is the starter. Cut it out, fellas. Cut the nonsense. Cut the nonsense. This is ridiculous. Andy Dalton is the starter. Why? Like, why? And we'll get into that. We'll get into these young guys.
He's the red rifle. Give him the respect he deserves. He took that
rifle's out of ammo right now. Okay, so
he took a team who hadn't been to the playoffs in 2 decades to the playoffs for 6 or 7 straight years. There is some kind of respect that must be put on his name for that. But you're not taking a guy number 11 overall, giving up 2 first-round picks to do it, and then going, yeah, but we're going to sit him behind Andy Dalton, who was the backup in Dallas last year. It's not happening.
I guess so. Where are we at?
I love it. We were talking about the Bears at 11 and that decision to move up to get Justin Fields to make that pick. And that what we then see is we see Micah Parsons go off for Sean Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker. Some people thought that was a little early for him. I mean, I think he's probably the best guard on the board. And from a Jets perspective, exactly what they need. The left side of their line now looks absolutely superb.
Right.
And then Mac Jones. Mac Jones comes off the board to the Patriots as a fan, as a neutral, to see what Bill Belichick could dream up, even as a defensive guy, but what he and Josh McDaniels could dream up for a new style of quarterback, for a modern NFL quarterback, a guy that can do it all, the kind of guys we're seeing. Mac Jones is the first kind of immobile guy we've seen come out in the first round for a while. And yet they're getting a guy who everyone's ready to go, yeah, but he's statuesque, but he's like Tom Brady, so it'll be fine.
Nobody's like
comparing him to Tom Brady. Feels a little bit.
Nobody is like Tom Brady. Nobody.
And yet that's the way it's now going to go. I don't know. I really thought that we were going to see Belichick try and get for Justin Fields or one of the other kind of more exciting, more kind of diverse quarterback skill sets out there. And
but that doesn't always mean. But my thing is with all these mobile quarterbacks, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a great fit. At the end of the day, the pocket passer still rules. Okay. Mahomes is an anomaly. He's one of one. He can run around if he wants to, but he can sit there and sling the football wherever he wants. You still need to be able to sit there, read the defense, give your guys time to get open, move around the pocket, and figure it out.
It's a lot of Seahawks fans right now who are going, oh, what about Russell Wilson? That's my
Russell
Wilson.
No, Russell Wilson, he has the ability to scramble, but he doesn't scramble unless he needs to. But he is more than capable of sitting there and delivering the football, which is what he does. So the ones that want to run around and do all kinds of crazy stuff like that, that doesn't fly so long. I look at someone like Lamar Jackson, it's great all year. And then when it's time for him to sit there and he has to actually deliver, and be accurate and make plays to his receivers, it's guys like, hey, we're going to stop you from running and we hope you beat us with your arm. We will take that bet. We hope you beat us with your arm. So, if you can sit there and right now you look at the Chargers, Herbert, he sit there and delivers. Josh Allen is more capable of running around. He's probably, people don't give him credit, but he's one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's able to sit there and deliver. He does have that rocket launcher on his arm as a gift. But the fact that the quarterback needs to be mobile, that is not the case. It's a bonus, but you still have to stand there and deliver.
Let me ask you about another guy I want to talk to you about from the first round, Will. And I think he was my favorite edge rusher in this draft anyway, based on tape alone. But when you start to hear more about his story, and when the NFL put out that video about his story last week, about where his name comes from, about his family moving over, his mum working 3 jobs to put him through school for him to get to go to college. And you got referenced in the video, Will, as a Rhode Island guy. Quitty Pay's video from the NFL talked about how, you were the first person out of Rhode Island to get drafted in how many years? I'm sure you know. I don't.
I don't know. I don't keep track of those numbers. I don't know. I'll let everyone else do that.
But from my perspective, the Colts go and get this guy. I think he's a need. I think he's a great player. But also, what British sports fans who don't know the NFL so well, who don't get excited about the draft because of all of its multitude of meanings, what they want to hear are these stories. They want to hear the guys who have picked themselves up by the bootstraps, carrying their whole family to, prosperity off the back of this, wouldn't have gone to college normally if they hadn't been for football, get into a pro team, buy their mum a house or a car. Like, these are the guys that they love. And so I think Kwity Paye, for me, has been that story from this year that people have really latched on to. And not only that, but he's a great football player on top of it all.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I actually met Kwity. I believe he was an eighth grader. And I spoke to his school and I spoke to him just about, knowing he wanted to play football. I know I met him first. I spoke to his school, then I actually met him at Hendricken. But we spoke plenty of times, but kind of told him the path. And right then it was kind of like, okay, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but he begged his mom to send him to my high school, which was Bishop Hendricken High School. And she ended up working, 3 jobs to help send him. I don't think she's gone to one high school game in 4 years because she was always working. And he was like, look, if you send me to this high school, I promise I will get a scholarship. That is a bold promise, especially coming from Rhode Island, which it is a rare case. It's the smallest state in the United States. And it's very, very rare. And the fact that he held on to that promise and did that. And then for the sake that he went on and ended up being a first round pick, because the biggest thing for him was she worked way too hard and he wanted to help her with that. And obviously the story is way deeper, going back to, them escaping all kinds of violence in Africa. You guys can check that out. Just go to NFL.com or Kwity's page on social media. It explains all that stuff. And it was cool, man. I'm just really happy, excited for him, man. And he's blazing a new trail and this is awesome. And it's interesting. Like some people weren't happy with the pick because his sack production wasn't huge, but he's one of the most athletic and versatile defenders in the entire draft. He was an All-American running back in high school, who also played defensive end. And I spoke to a general manager, Chris Ballard, after the pick. I texted him. I said, listen, make sure you take care of my guy. And he's like, Kwity is the exact kind of person we want on this team. He fits with everything that we're trying to do, from a physical and character standpoint. So this was their guy. This is what they wanted. So this is really cool.
That is a huge part of it as well, because not only are you looking for great talent that's going to improve your team, but we see it time and time again, guys over the years who have been that great talent but then flamed out because of character concerns, because they've not been able to make the step up. And the NFL do a lot, like whether it's through like the rookie symposium, or I think they saw what was happening with the NFL, which for a long time, which was, how short the career span was, and then the percentage of guys who ended up off the back of it being broke after like 3 years after being out of the league. It's an astonishing percentage of players that it ends up being the case for. And so they have done a lot more in recent years, but how much is that character side of it? Like, I think as players that are already in the building, not only when you meet a guy for the first time and it's clear that they're a good guy, but also like if you're sitting there and you see somebody picked in your position group or at a premium position for your team and you're excited for them to come in the building, and then they end up being just not a particularly nice human being. I don't know. How do you deal with that kind of thing?
You know what? It's a matter of, well, if they first, how are they with me? Right. When I meet somebody new, someone could be like, oh, this person you got to watch out. This person can act like this. I said, well, let me find out for myself. And are they treating me with respect first and foremost? And then I look at how they treat other people as well. And eventually, especially in a profession like that, you will be humbled in one way or another, whether it's due to performance, whether it's in the game, whether it's something like you will get humbled in that case. So I don't know. I'm different in terms of my mindset. I never take anything personal because I really don't care. But
to be as thick-skinned as you.
Yeah, I have to be, man. It's especially playing in the NFL. It's so cutthroat and it's so you just never know with anything. And I'm glad I brought up the cutthroat part, because I was on social media talking about what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, and, people brought up just, why does he want to move on? Why is he being selfish? I'm like, look, guys, and sure, you can apply this to anything in life, but the business, these teams are about the logo on the helmet. These teams they're not all in on the players. They're all about the organization. They're always thinking about the future, always thinking how to save money, always thinking how to get better. But sometimes better doesn't necessarily mean on the field. Better just means overall as an organization from a financial perspective. Anything is possible. I've seen, Brett Favre get forced his way out. He just took us to the NFC Championship game. The Niners parted away with Montana. They moved on from him because they wanted Steve Young. Colts moved on from Peyton Manning because they wanted Andrew Luck. The Chargers moved on from Drew Brees because they wanted Phillip Rivers. They weren't sure about Drew Brees' arm. Speaking of the Chargers, Marty Schottenheimer got fired after going 14-2. The decisions are crazy. You just never ever know. So it's that's why nothing surprises me, Will G, man. It's nuts.
What into those terms as well? Like a lot of people will say, like, what the reaction is from an individual, because there's a lot of talk about going into a building, what it is for the rookies and how they react. But actually, like in the same way as for those guys, if you're sat there and you see a first round pick coming at your position who is going to be challenging you for your job on the team, it's also not just about what that player comes in and does. It's how you react to that. It's whether you're the kind of guy that goes, right, bring it on, I'm ready for it, or whether you're the kind of guy that goes, oh, no, don't like this, not happy with it, and shies away from it. And how fragile is the ego and how hard is the work ethic to prove yourself?
Well, in this case, for Aaron Rodgers, he's probably just like, we're so close. Let's just keep building. We're so close. He doesn't feel threatened in terms of ability. He's probably uncertain because he's like, we're so close. We need to keep getting ammo to go ahead and win this thing because we're so close. But yeah, there are cases where if someone is drafted your position, you do have the guys that can make the choice. Either they just ante up the competition, like let's go for it, or they crumble and they want to out. They want to go elsewhere. But the one thing that we want to know is like, are we in the future plans? I remember when I was in Washington and we signed safety. After I just signed a deal, we signed safety DJ Swearinger. And I actually called Bruce Allen, our president, and I said, am I in the future plans of the Washington Redskins? And he was like, yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be. I was like, you guys just signed two safeties. Actually, they signed DJ Swearinger and David Bruton. And we also had Stuart Cravens, who they were really trying to make the first round. They were trying to really make him the starter. And I just want to know, like, where am I in the plans? If I'm not in the plans, then let me go somewhere else. And he was convinced, like, no, you are in the plans. Obviously, I still had to go compete for my job. But I just wanted to know, like, you're bringing in all these guys, am I in the plans? I'm at the point in my career was like, gosh, they kept bringing in guys in my position. And then I kept I still ended up on top being the starter, but it was like, man, this is exhausting. I'm in year 9, still fighting for my life. Like, so I just want to know now, because let me go put my efforts somewhere else where I have a chance. Because and the reason is, well, people will think like, well, just go compete, go compete. It's like, sometimes you can give your all, you can go compete and it doesn't matter because these teams already have their minds made up. You look at the Cardinals when they're like, Josh Rosen's our guy, but Kyler Murray is there. Okay. Sorry, Josh. We're going to go get Kyler Murray, because we simply think he's better. There's no competition. We made our minds up.
What about so turning our attention to actually the guys that you worked with going into the draft? You saw Elijah Molden end up going to the Titans, Paulson Adebo going to the Saints, both in the 3rd round. Keith Taylor ended up with the Panthers in the 5th. How do you feel about those picks? How are those guys feeling about it? Have you spoken to them? How do you feel about the fits there? It must be great to see guys you're working with, going and being presented this opportunity and now getting to go to work?
No, I think it's cool. It's just awesome to finally just get into the NFL in itself. Obviously, I'm sure I thought Elijah would go higher in the draft, but a lot of that is circumstantial. There's a lot of, you could be rated higher than other players, but it's based on what that team needed at that point in time when it was their time to draft. So it's not necessarily like, oh, they don't think you're good enough. They probably just didn't need, a defensive back at the time. They, like Dallas went and got, Nashawn Wright from Oregon State. And he's a 6'4" cornerback going to Dallas. And Dallas, Dan Quinn's defense is known for playing big corners. Elijah Molden at 5'10" is not fitting that style. You know what I mean? Denver, they needed a center. Chargers wanted a tight end. They have all these things, right? They didn't need a corner. I'm looking at all these teams in the third round who did not need a corner. And it just so happens, Elijah went to the Tennessee, which is still pretty good at third. And that was a need. They already got Caleb Farley in the first because Tennessee lost Malcolm Butler and they lost Adoree Jackson. So they had to reload there. Then I look at, Paul Sandebo. That was a great situation for him. He's a big corner, very, very, very athletic. And he's going to the Saints. His defensive back coach, I know very, very well, is Chris Richard. He was in Seattle. And I think this is a really good situation for him. And he could be a day one starter if things go well his way. And then for Keith Taylor, I thought he would go a little higher, but I knew that he didn't have enough tape that probably stood out to people. Now, his way he made money was when he went to the Senior Bowl. And this is why they always say you never know who's watching, right? In any situation in life. Well, when he was at the Senior Bowl, the team he was on was coached by the Miami Dolphins. The opposite coach was Matt Rule. It was the Panthers. I remember I tweeted out that Keith Taylor should be picked soon, and I put his highlights from the Senior Bowl. I'm like, he balled out at the Senior Bowl. And it's funny, the Carolina Panthers actually tweeted me back, and they said, we know, right when they put in their pick, because they drafted Keith Taylor. So it's like, you never know who's watching. They probably were like, gosh, we need to write his name down. He's making all these plays against us. So that was cool. So they're all excited. Elijah's excited. He thinks it's a great fit. He loves the way they play. And
just on that point,
get another corner.
And just on that point, like I don't want to make this isn't a 49ers show. Like I'm a 49ers fan and there's a big talking point, but we're not going to talk about them all the time.
Be passionate. It's football though. Yeah. Talk about your team.
But to give you just a prime example of how that can work, you get a guy like Sandebo who played at the Senior Bowl under Kyle Shanahan, ends up getting quote unquote overdrafted because he went higher than many people had him mocked. But Kyle Shanahan had worked with him at the Senior Bowl, knew what kind of man he was, knew what kind of receiver he was, and he goes on to have an absolutely sensational rookie season. And he had some injury problems last year, but those kind of things where the guys who coach in the Senior Bowl get a chance to. It's not a combine. It's not an interview. You get to work with those guys for a week. I'm excited. If I see someone from a Senior Bowl land on a team that was coaching at that Senior Bowl, I always think to myself, that's a pick that I like because they know that guy. Yeah,
you see the man firsthand. You don't get more hands-on with the player than the Senior Bowl. You are coaching them football. They are in your system. Or they're on the opposite side. Like you get to see them day in and day out. And then these coaches, they just talk all day long. So it's a mix of the combine interviews, it's a mix of pro day, and it's a mix of like mini camp. It's all those things. So yeah, when you see a player firsthand, like by all means, you actually get to find out more answers than you think. And especially this year, the Senior Bowl was such a huge factor because there was no combine. So if you went to the Senior Bowl, you did have an advantage over a lot of people because you got evaluated. Actually, it could be good or bad, because if you didn't perform, then you probably dropped.
Look, there's still, I mean, we could sit here for about 3 hours and we've barely gotten out of the first round here. And there's so many more we could get into, but we've got a whole off season and we're going to have great guests coming on and we're going to be doing loads of cool stuff over the off season on the Gridiron Show. So just before we move on, are there any drafts that we've not talked about yet that you particularly wanted to highlight? Anyone that you thought did amazing business? I've certainly got a few in my mind. I think like Cleveland in particular, getting a guy like Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa in where they did in the second round, who many people had in the first round, like Greg Newsom's a great pick. I thought that they looked like a team who were like, they had their talent set ready to go. They looked like a team who are ready to compete, and they just made good value picks of the best players on their board where they were available. And that looked really good to me. Guys like the Chargers, I thought, had a really good draft this year. Obviously, we talked a bit about the Bears already. I know they didn't pick much beyond, but getting Fields and Jenkins in the first 2 rounds looks great for them. So is there anyone who really stood out to you? Anyone that you wanted to highlight?
You know, I like what Dallas did in getting Micah Parsons. That was an important pick because, I mean, Dallas, they lost 2 linebackers. And Micah Parsons, he fits in that realm of that new breed of linebackers where they're running 4.4s and 4.3s and can just go all over the place. He's continuing on that linebacker from Penn State type of tradition, and he's that guy you need right there in the middle to just wreak havoc and take care of everything. So I really love what they did there. They went and got Kelvin Joseph, who a cornerback from Kentucky, who's just really, really good playmaker. And then they, in the 3rd round, I'll finish with him. They got, Osa Ojidiziwa from the D tackle from UCLA. So I think I love how they just went their first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks was defense. Okay. So they're letting you know, we need to build some depth on the defensive end. Yeah. We know
what's wrong.
Yeah. We got plenty of stuff on offense, but they went and racked up on some defensive guys. And then there's this kind of a sleeper pick here. Semi Fehoko, the hybrid receiver from Stanford, ran 4.3s, 4.4s. He's actually insanely athletic. I got to watch him here when he was trained. He's, in terms of like, he can wonderful hands, makes incredible one hand like trick catches like OBJ, and he can do 360s dunking a basketball. I really love the way he moves his route. So he actually is a sneaky weapon for Dallas. I keep my eyes on him. So I like what Dallas did.
I highlighted the Chargers because I think that the Chargers, they managed to get Rashawn Slater, essentially fall to them where they were. They didn't have to go up and get him, get the second best tackle, some think even the best tackle in the draft. Penei Sewell is the rawer, higher upside guy maybe, but Slater is ready to go. Asante Samuel Jr., it feels like, fell to them as well and fits Brandon Staley. That Brandon Staley defense that they ran in LA last year. If he's planning to run a similar scheme in LA still, but on the other side of LA with Asante Samuel in there, it feels like an absolutely perfect fit. And later on in the draft, they got a guy like Josh Palmer who suits them really well. Like I thought, I loved everything they did. Every pick that came out for them just felt like a bit of a home run. So there's a few guys that I think had a really good couple of days.
And because it's obvious, I also like to highlight the Jets too. We talked about getting Zach Wilson, done. Also Elijah Vera Tucker, done. And then they go get Elijah Moore. I think that was just those 3, and they got Michael Carter from North Carolina. 1, 2, 3, they went offense, and those are really, really like day one. Those guys can play right now type of picks that they can plug in there. So I like what the Jets did. They're building. They went, not only did they get their quarterback, but they got talent around him, like they said, to help him out. So I like that right there. I think those are good moves.
I don't think we're going to be first on this bandwagon, but let's say that we're going to see the Jets, I reckon, as the most improved team in the NFL in 2021. I think that's potentially an easy pick. I could see if you want to go from a team who we thought weren't going to win a single game in 2020 at one point until we got right to the end of the season, they could easily be a 6, 7, 8 win team this year, which might not sound phenomenal, but is a big improvement. Trust me.
Listen, they're the most improved by simply getting Robert Saleh. Period. Done. Coach of the year just by taking that job. Done.
You know I'm going to agree with it. So we now are a few days removed from the draft. I guess again, like everything, I feel like we shouldn't have to caveat it at this point because it's been true for everything. But it's a very different year to every other year, so maybe it won't be the same. But for those rookies who are going in now, mini camps on the horizon, OTAs and everything coming up. What is this next couple of months like? What was it like for you going through this, and what do these guys need to do to make sure that they're not just picked, but they're still in the NFL and starting come first week of September?
Yeah, the biggest thing for these draft picks is, my recommendation is, number one, you need to go dark. Turn your phone off. Okay. Just these 3 days, it has nothing to do with anything outside of your mission in football. It's going to move super fast. These teams are not going to slow down for you. If you're not a first round pick, they are not going to slow down for you. And you need to just bury yourself in the playbook, ask questions, and take care of your body. Okay. And that's what it comes down to. Like, nothing else in this world matters, because what minicamp is actually doing, it's reevaluation. They're trying to make sure they made the right decision. That's what this is for. So just because you got drafted, or especially if you were brought in undrafted, then it's really, your leash is extremely short. Zero tolerance for you. You need to do something. You need to not make mistakes. And then I know it puts anxiety on guys, but that's the truth. You need to be lights out and keep showing up. Especially if you weren't drafted, you better run the fastest no matter what you're doing, honestly. And I mean, I've had players who I was drafted before me, that did not make it to training camp because they were like, oh, this guy was not who I thought he was. So that's what this is. Like, nothing else matters on this weekend. So that's my advice, man. That's what these guys need to know. I'm already reaching out to a few guys right now in particular and letting them know, like, that's what this is, because no one told me what it was. I went into this thing blind and found out just, trial by fire. And so that's my advice to everyone here. That's what it is. That's what it's for. And they continue to build those habits, because they want to know maybe you have all the physical traits. They want to know how smart are you? Can we give you a whole playbook in a day, and can you pick it up now and go out there and execute it? They're going to find out. There are some guys who maybe weren't as physically gifted, but they're like, hey, I can retain information and play football. There are guys who probably stood out at the combine. Maybe some guys who didn't. The guys who didn't stood out in the combine. They're the ones like, okay, but in a football setting, I could play ball. So
I love the idea, like what it must be like when you're a team. And I think the one that stands out in the mind right now from the last couple of years is DK Metcalf, who everyone was like, yeah, but he's a workout warrior. He looks great. The low body fat, can do all of that. But we've never seen anything that proves he can play football. It must be the first day in training camp when they actually see what he's like out on the field and just be like, yes, come on, we've absolutely nailed this.
Oh yeah. No, but yeah, when you see a guy going off, you're like, great. But I think it's even cooler when you see like someone undrafted make plays. And then that's where those scouts really pat their backs. Like, say, I knew I found this guy. So
yeah, I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot of regional scouts going, told you over the next few days. Will, it's always good fun. I loved breaking down the draft. We've got a really fun summer of stuff coming up as well as we do build up into OTAs and up into mini camps and everything else that's going to be going on, because we're going to be speaking to special guests. We're going to be getting people's stories from them. We're going to be speaking to people around the league, discussing and reacting to the news as it comes through as well. Will's going to be with us every week. I'll be here every week. I think you care more about Will B than Will G. I'm not going to lie.
That's not true. You're a local.
I'm okay with it. It's why I dress to impress. I've got to have something to hook it onto. Do go and give the podcast a rating and a review. It helps more people find it. Share it on social media. Tweet us and tell us what you liked about it, what you didn't like, what you want to hear more of, because we just want to hear from you.
Yeah, we're trying to get better.
It's appointment listening. That's what we want. We want you to say, I want to listen for every week. Yeah, 100%. 100. Coach us up. Make sure that we are, when we get to the point where we're hitting the season, that we are ready to take starter snaps. That's the point.
Yeah. And please ask questions at our on our Twitter or Instagram, and we will write those down and try to answer them on our show. So yeah, do that. Keep everything interactive and engaging, and it'll be super fun.
Beautiful. Great stuff. Will, good man. Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Gridiron Show.